Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This year, as part of our coverage of ATX Television Festival Season 8, I was lucky enough to chat with Joe Murphy and Sarah Choi, writers for the show Younger. We talk about which characters they enjoy writing most, the fun twists and turns of this show, and much more. Hope you enjoy.
So this is Les from the TV Dudes. I'm lucky enough to be sitting here with Sarah Choi and Joe Murphy, writers from Younger. I've loved the show since the start. I was afraid, like I think most people, I think Melissa mentioned it in the previous interview, the premise seems like such a tightrope to walk that I could see it getting ludicrous to try to pretend like the world hasn't found this out or the world doesn't know. And then I was incredibly impressed at how the show doles out the revelation, who finds out. There's not a light switch of on and off of like she's revealed in the paper. Everybody can see my hand gestures at home.
That was a very attitude-y snap for everyone at home.
Yes. Yeah. As writers on the show, how has it been trying to balance the drama for other characters with this central core mystery up in the air? Do you ever find yourself thinking like, that's one plot thread too many, or we can't do that, it'll take too much focus off of the main tension?
We definitely pitch a lot of story for this show. I mean, our episodes are always running long. We always end up having to trim them down.
We hand in scripts that are too long, and our line producer will come to us and be like, cut this, cut 10 pages.
You are not an hour-long drama.
Yeah, we can't add 6 more days to our shoot.
So it's funny when we watch the episodes back, because sometimes we're surprised by what's actually still in the episodes, because we have pitched so many different pathways to so many different characters finding out when and where. I think that with revealing Liza's age, it's sort of become now less of a conceit and more just a what's the best way to describe it? Sort of just a condition, and it was really fun from seasons 1 through 3 for her to see her kind of dodging and weaving and playing, kind of like dress up, playing costume play with the idea of being younger. But now it's actually even more enjoyable to play the B side of that, which is when characters know and get to sort of put her in complicated positions because of her age, whether they blackmail her about it, or whether they're even just giving her, just teasing her a little bit about it, which was surprising for us when we were planning Kelsey, which was the end of season 4, was, she's going to be heartbroken and upset and deceived, but then we got to move past that and find, this just deepened their friendship in a way that we didn't expect. And then that opens up a whole new way of telling stories, because with Kelsey knowing means that Kelsey can sometimes use that knowledge to her advantage and also be frustrated with Liza that she hasn't told everyone. So it is still always walking a fine line.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's a condition, but at this point in the story, I think that people in the show are now defined by their relationships more than The Secret ever even did early on. So I think that the reason that people keep watching the show is to see where these relationships have gone. And I feel like we've been getting this question a lot, like at ATX, and I think it's because people are wondering, like, wait, you guys know that The Secret's still there, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going into the 6th season now, and
there are still people who don't know.
People still don't know.
And then sometimes we catch ourselves out in the room. Like, we're like, and then Caitlin comes into town, we're like, but wait, Caitlin doesn't know. And someone's like, nope, Caitlin, her daughter, she knows.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't even remember that. Oh, I'm sorry, that was your episode.
Yeah, that was my episode. Thanks so much for remembering. I think that we get to tell juicier stories without the lie, if anything, because it lets us focus on the relationships, and then it also lets us combine characters that Liza historically had to keep apart because one person didn't know, one person couldn't be in the same room with this person. There was a lot of sort of almost like Mrs. Doubtfiring of kind of keeping people apart because they would expose her in a certain way just because of their knowledge of who she was and how old she was. So it's now that we get to tell stories about the relationships and how, like this season we do some combinations of characters we've never done before, like Charles and Maggie. We spend some more time with Charles and Josh together, which is always kind of fraught and dangerous.
Yeah, and that's definitely new territory. And I think people are really going to appreciate the fact that we don't talk about the lie as much, because I don't know, I feel like I don't want to talk about it. I think the world of it is so much smaller than the one that we've created and the one that we've built, where everyone goes off on their own in the actual real world, and they're not and Liza's not limited by a lie she told to get a job.
Yes.
But it's always there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also, if you hang story on that lie, it stretches the believability of the show. Whereas now it's more about how important she is to these people, regardless of the lie, whether they're knowing or not knowing, is how valuable she is at the workplace, how valuable she is to Kelsey, how loved she is by Charles. So that's sort of, what drives story more.
For me, I think the surprise was finding out that the lie feels like a will they, won't they. Like I'm waiting to the end of the season to see if they kiss. And instead the show is about the emotional complexities of a relationship, which is a lot more interesting than will they or won't they end up together to me.
Yes.
And I am much more intrigued by the friendships and adversarial relationships that occur because of the burden of the secret, rather than whether or not it would be real. By having people know and there still be work there, and there still be emotional work in these relationships, so that it isn't just I know, now we destroy Liza and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the biggest effect of it too has been what the lie has done to Liza as just a person in the world, as a 40-year-old woman in the world of millennials and adjusting. And I think that she started out lying to fit in, but now at this point she's actually changed, and she sees the world with different eyes than she had 4 seasons ago.
Yes. Yeah, I remember I was reading one article where the writers of The Americans used Younger as a show that they would refer to in the room.
Oh,
we were
yeah.
oh my god, that's so great. Because Americans is this spectacularly well-written show. So is ours.
So is yours. Don't sell yourself short.
But at the same time, we've got a similar sort of DNA of what is the impact of lying? What is the impact of, deceit? And of kind of... it's sort of like a long form of betrayal. It's like cheating, and then that we got to play stories about forgiveness, which is like Charles, accepting Liza as she is, same as Josh in season 2 or season 1. So, I think that people really relate to that more than the lying is the thing that people can give each other a second chance.
I love seeing the reaction to the lie more than the lie itself, because I think it's really interesting to see shades of a character when they're forced to forgive not forced to, but given the option to forgive somebody for betraying them in a way. And I think that we've done that really well in our show.
It's kind of how I felt as soon as early on in the show when the Trout character was introduced, knowing that this lie directly goes in the face of the problems that this woman is dealing with at work on her own. Like, well, no, but I am the age I am, and I'm having to just make it. What do you mean you cheated and lied to get here? And I've been thrilled each time some new thing has been brought on that I could trust the writing of this show to do an interesting thing with this, and not just the expected zig. You would zag when I expected.
It's funny, we discover in the room that the concept of ageism, pun intended, doesn't get old. We find we find new ways to talk about ageism and introduce the fact that we do hold people sort of back from being their full selves because of their age, whether they're young, whether they're old, whether they're perceived as not having as much experience. We definitely get an opportunity to tell that with Kelsey this year. Now that she's sort of running this company, she's going to come up against things that, sort of like an attitude of, well, you don't have the experience, you don't have the grey hair, you don't have the people, so how could you know what you're talking about? So, but the fact that she's so connected with her audience of readers at Millennial isn't as valued as someone who's been in the industry as long as, say, Charles. And that's a whole different way of talking about ageism, which, we probably didn't consider telling at the beginning of the show.
I think it's the full spectrum of it, and I think we try our best to show the different ways of overcoming sexism a lot in the workplace too, and then just in the world of business and in New York. And I feel like all the way down to Kelsey being the boss, from Liza having to lie to get a job, it's so different but yet so similar in ways that we couldn't conceive before.
Yeah, the show sort of evolves as cultural movements are taking place, and when it just so happened that as we were sort of moving the women to being in charge of this company, and that started back last season, that we were having the Me Too movement and Time's Up, and all this gender politics happening in the world right now, and so we got an opportunity to sort of echo that with our characters. You know, a big sort of set piece of the first episode of this season is these three women, like, basically saying, like, we've got each other's backs. You know, no, there's no man on top, there's no guy running this company, but we can do this, you know, and they have to sort of, like, take, you know, sort of a, you know, I hate the phrase girl boss, but, you know, like, a very sort of, like, feminist bent that, like, the show has always had in its DNA, but it just feels so timely now.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is odd to consider that they've not been in charge of the company prior. I mean, it feels like such the lady show.
Yeah. You're like, wait, there are men on this show? They're just playing.
They're just
But you're telling me that those men are also in charge of things?
Right. We never see Charles really working.
No.
I mean, the one time he was working, he went upstate to, like, get that book and he failed. So how well was he really doing?
But he fails up.
Yeah.
As writers in a room, I know often you don't necessarily get to write your voice. You write to the voice of the room or the voice of the show you've been hired on, and your disparate backgrounds of Broad City, different shows. Do you have a character on the show that you feel most sounds like you?
Well, no one has an Australian accent, so that's challenging.
See,
Thank God they don't.
You've got to work that in.
I would. It's funny. You sort of. It depends on the story for the character you're writing. When I first joined, I was really loving writing Lauren because I'm a fast talker, and you can kind of get a lot of. You can put so much in. Like, Molly is such a fast talker, who plays Lauren, that she can whip through dialogue.
Yeah. And you can give her like 6 jokes in one line, and she'll nail every single one.
Exactly. And then you can give some really dry, hilarious one-liners to Diana, Miriam.
I was gonna say, I feel like I could answer this question for you based on reading your scripts and watching your episodes. I think you do a really good Diana. Not to say that you're like a dry bitch, maybe.
Miriam tears that role up.
She does.
She's so
she is great.
It's almost like we have to pull back on the amount of Diana we put in the script because we end up having to lose so much in editing because our episodes run long, and that's because we've given Diana a full A story.
I know. Because she handles it so well.
Yes,
it's just so great to see a woman like Diana in every single situation.
Yeah, and you know that the audience just adores her because she's someone that, you know, you have to work hard to earn her trust and love, but you know, once you've got it, it's a very strong, pure thing, even though she never expresses it. And there's also this great thing about the character of Diana, which I love, which is that she's sort of like very high fashion and, you know, sort of, you know, ridiculous with her necklaces, but at the same time, she has a real lack of sense of self, which I adore. You know, she says some things which are like, oh, like, especially when she's in scenes, she's one-on-one with Charles. Like, you can really make her say, like,
she's so unaware, or just has a very different perception of herself than is real.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a weird sort of confidence that you a normal person would never have.
Yes, which is fun to put yourself in her shoes. So I would say maybe Diana, and I enjoy writing Kelsey as well, mainly because I'm a big drinker. So.
I like writing for Lauren and Kelsey too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a 29-year-old woman, and that makes sense. So, but I also really like writing for Liza. I think she's such an earnest character, but she's in this world where there's so much dirtiness, honestly, and like other characters around her aren't afraid to be bad, and she's not bad. She doesn't have a bad bone in her body, except for the fact that she's lying.
Yes. And she's also what I love about writing Liza is that she's always got kind of like 2 or 3 things happening for her at one time in a scene. So she's engaging with what's happening. Like even if it's like just a very simple like conference room scene, she's like intensely listening and personalizing with whatever book it is, as well as that she's sort of like over-analyzing her dynamic with whoever she's in the conference room with, as well as trying to conceal something about herself. Like so.
Completely. And Sun Foster is so good. Like you could have her read a telephone book, and she would make you feel every emotion.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah,
so
she's
good.
great.
Do you find it difficult to time or remember to put in lighthearted stuff? I mean, when you're having so many dramatic storylines to the point that you're having to cut back things.
Well, that's the stuff that usually ends up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately.
Is the more light?
Or like hilarious these stories that we spend 8 hours a day laughing at in the writer's room.
Yeah.
But
Do you ever get done with an edit and go, oh my god, we've made an incredibly dark hour of television about
all the
this?
time. When even Darren is like, we got to put this back in. We gotta put this back in.
Yeah.
We gotta put this back in. But
There's been some really funny comedy runners that we've had to cut for time that are there, to be, to kind of give you a break from, the emotional threads. We had one where Diana was dating Richard in season 3, or season 4 perhaps, and she, because he moved in with her, she couldn't poop in her own home, so she then had to use a different bathroom. She had to poop in the office for the first time, and she found that very confronting. So then she became what we was calling the pooping pilgrim, and she would go to a different floor to poop. And we wrote it, we cast it, we shot it. It was hysterically funny. It'll only ever be seen on Facebook,
unfortunately.
But that kind of stuff, you sort of it's like they say, kill your darlings. You have to end up cutting some things that you really like.
But I will say that we do we give as much focus and attention to all that lighthearted stuff as we do the drama, and it's really funny to speak really seriously and pitch really seriously on poop and dick jokes and
I get so many dick jokes.
All these. You're the king of dick
king
jokes.
of dick jokes. Yeah. Whenever Darren's like, you can write this one, I was like, I wonder why.
But yeah, it is. It's fun from now looking back on our season of writing what we talk about the most. And I'm thinking of one particular storyline that isn't the finale that I'm not going to mention.
We sometimes just have a funny line and we work our way backwards from that. But I do think that we do break the show as a drama, because and that's the way that Darren prefers to work, because you have to ensure that it's based in a kind of a emotional, relatable way that feels believable for the characters. If we don't just stay on the surface and just tell jokes. We're not a hard comedy. We definitely are more of a dramedy in terms of we do take some dark emotional turns. Some people have died on this show.
People have died.
Yes, people have had sex with sheep, but people have been crushed by beings.
Oh my god! I've been waiting all day for somebody to bring that up.
But yeah, I think that that's why audiences relate to it, because they want to feel for these people, and I think that you do feel for them more if you're taking the emotional turns with them.
Also, our cast, even in our most dramatic storylines, if you give them one line, Miriam can say one line with her comedic twist in a very dark scene, and it lightens the scene. You find ways to fit it in, because you don't want it to be too...
No, I think you do a marvelous job of balancing it. I think it's why people respond to it. I mean, nobody's lives is solid dark. You have absurd, funny moments with your friends in the middle of a car being in the shop or whatever. People have problems. People also have laughs.
Yeah, I think we really do want the show to feel like some romantic escapism, but we want it to be grounded in emotional truth. So, there is something absolutely aspirational about these people that go to all these parties in publishing, which they don't have, or live in these huge lofts in Williamsburg, which no longer are there because they've been knocked down and taken over by tiny apartments years ago. But at the same time, we can all watch this show and get 23 minutes a week of relief, because it really is something that makes us feel good. And we don't want to kick our characters to a too deep and a darker place that you never feel like they're going to get out of, because there's enough shows on television that are doing that.
Yeah,
and just news.
And and the world.
Life, the real world.
Thank you both so much for taking out time today to talk to me about it. I really appreciate it.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.